please rise if you can and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mrs. Munson?
Andrew Benson. Katrina Bakowitz.
Here.
Doug Day. Joseph Wetmore.
Here.
Edward Levine.
Here. Okay, first order of business is the draft. Is it 2018 audit?
Yes.
It was the right number. I looked at that and go, okay. 2018 audit presentation by Patrick Jordan. So, Patrick, please come forward and get started.
Okay, thank you. Well, it's printed in final form, just pending your acceptance. So it came out in the July meeting. It went through a lot of the documents that you have there, so the printed them out ahead of time. You should have several of them, with the top one being a summary of what we did after the first draft went out to you in July. There were some questions that came up in that the July meeting, which we addressed. There was a report that we didn't have at the time, the bullet point report, which is now incorporated into the main audit report. That actually, we did give you the numbers on that in the executive summary. We were able to just put those in, but it hit so many places in the full report, we couldn't get that in time for the July. Plus, it wasn't final. That report wasn't finalized or approved for final, and so we were holding off until that was also. So I thought I wasn't going to go through the executive summary again. We went through that and the letters, everything. If you remember, was pretty positive with the audit process. Nothing of concern to report, and all the letters, no internal control matters, not any significant. There were a couple that were mentioned in the first draft of the management comment letter. We clarified both of those, eliminated one of them. We just had one recommendation that somebody, a second person, review journal entries that are able to be made by the bookkeeper. I do want to just go through what did change from that. It went out, I think, around the time of the August board meeting. We just couldn't get here in time, or he didn't have enough time to look at it. So just want to run through those really quick. On the executive summary, one of the questions that came up is, did we remove the correct cost or report the right amount for the sale of the Auburn Road acres across the street? That was a good question. It did result in a $10,000 adjustment. So there were 13.5 acres sold out of 146 which were purchased. There were a couple layers of that, and we did fail to pick up the first initial purchase layer of about 100,000, which translated into 10,000 adjustment in these prorated to all the acres. The required communication has no changes. That was really the overall summary of the audit process. Anything new had to be incorporated, accounting pronouncements, policies that you had to adopt, nothing there. And then just the process itself, if there were any concerns, any difficulties performing the audit, there weren't any. So we did not have to change that at all. As I said, the management comment letter was where we did clarify that there should be a review process for journal entries, and recommended or discussed it with management and in Charmaine, and felt that there was a way to do that, because there are reports reviewed by board members, and this could just be part of that on a monthly basis. In addition, we did resolve the payroll portion of the comment, because there is backup by a couple of other individuals that actually produce the payroll, and that does review the payroll. As far as a lot of things at the department levels as well, some review and oversight, checks and balances. So on the main financial statement, we simplified the emphasis of the matter. There was a restatement footnote that got into a lot of numbers in the paragraph in the independent auditor's report. That was just simplified to take out the numbers there, guide you to where the full disclosure is in footnotes. The MD&A, we did incorporate the bullet point numbers, the increase in the joint venture, your interest in the joint venture, about $200,000. In the MD&A management discussion and analysis, that rolled into the statement of financial position and activities, and reconciliation pages, which tie the two sets of statements together, your fund basis statements and your government-wide, which has the which adds in the joint venture and capital assets and all. And also for the sale of the Auburn Bridge, that adjustment for the 10,000. Some clerical things that were pointed out in the last meeting. We did correct the language. There are no bridges that the town has. It's part of this infrastructure that's been changed. Corrected the councilmen to councilpersons, and we did have some budget and actual schedules where we didn't have the very final post-closing budget. So that's been adjusted. It did eliminate what we thought was an over expenditure of expenses. And so that was really the changes. I didn't intend to go through the documents again. I thought it was more formal. If you had more questions, I'd take them, or just be here for, I guess, if it's time to make the election or acceptance of the report.
Well, it's been a month, and I haven't received any more questions in a month. This is a courtesy. If any of the board members have any questions, you did address the one which was a concern for me, management comment letter, which is not a set of eyes, which not one of the board members will have to sign off as we do now with our vouchers, amongst other things. We can ask for volunteers for that from our board, see who wants to do that as we implement that. We'll work with Charmaine on that, which is fine by me. It's good to have another set of eyes on things. As you know, there are vouchers, 5 sets of eyes for one of those. So, if Katrina or Joe had more questions, I guess, feel free. Otherwise, we can move forward with this.
I would like to know a little more detail of what you are envisioning in the review of the ledger by somebody else.
Just the journal entries. So, it's part of our process, and you do an internal audit also of certain transactions, and you can go to a check or an invoice or something like that. A journal entry is just an entry that's put in. You can change an account balance, and if one person was able to go in and make changes to the ledger, just with journal entries, book entries, without any a lot of oversight. So we're just recommending, that's a pretty common thing. We do testing of journal entries is a big thing with the audit process. So we just felt that there really should be a second level of looking at those, and they can be filtered. You can run reports for journal entries and select whatever sample size you want on a monthly basis. Charmaine doesn't think there's any problem to get you those reports. I don't think, I believe she said there weren't a lot of them that are done that, just where you say, oh, this is in the wrong place, I'm going to move it to another account, things like that.
So what would that look like if I were reviewing it? What would I be doing?
Well, you start missing the entry and probably have to ask why this was done, or have the support ready to be. There should be an explanation with it that I misposted. I misposted this entry to the wrong account. And this is the correction.
So I should get a list of her changes she's made and then ask her what each one is.
Well, I would probably take a threshold, if it's over a certain threshold.
Okay.
I've seen the list of them, I did it once already.
I've done it once already. I'm just trying to make sure what I'm seeing is what you're envisioning.
Okay.
Talking about cash accounts might be more susceptible to trade on. Like that.
A lot of it's just interest being added into the system because it comes on a bank statement, not through some voucher or something.
Right.
What we've done in the past is we've seen it go from seed to harvest, we follow the whole transaction. And we see it as how many is put into the account, as it goes through the account, how it's paid for, how it's, that whole thing. Sometimes they're randomly chosen. There's a list of them, and you would randomly choose which one you want to with the audit.
Those are actual disbursements.
Right. And there's other ways you can do it also, especially cash is always important to do that. Once again, if you want to send us an email with basic guidelines on that, so we can use that more of a policy. I think that way, I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but I think you want to get something standardized so that whether it be Joe or Doug or Andra or Katrina, they can go through and got you do this, this, and this, and this, and follow the same procedure. So just a brief summary of how you want us to do that, that would be extremely
So in terms of approving this, I've just gotten the final one with all the extra numbers tonight, so I'd like to have some time to actually look at it and see what you presented us before I approve it.
There's no time frame on this, is there?
No.
Okay, we'll postpone the next one.
I think it's helpful to have the other board members have,
Sure.
given their,
I don't think you necessarily have to come if we have questions, we can tell you his questions. I don't want to take more of your
My
time.
question is, should I attend?
Well, once again, you'll have it in a month, so if there's any questions, I think the best thing to do is to send them to Patrick. And that way, you have a comfort zone on certain things, and hopefully by that time also, you can have that, that guidance for our policy, so to speak. And then we can probably roll everything together and incorporate everything together.
Just one page on top, pretty much covers everything that was done from that first draft.
Right, but I haven't seen any bullet point information that you added, and that's significant. I want you to go over it, look at it, think about it, make sure it makes sense to me.
So,
That's a significant change. Last time you gave us a couple of handout, these are the changes, but that was stuff that you didn't have time to get in, because you hadn't gotten it yet, so I want to see that.
October 16th.
Next week will just let me know if I don't hear.
Well, I would plan on coming. It's always nice to see you. Again.
Well, I'll cut the presentation down further.
Yeah. How's Conrad doing? Is he back from his honeymoon?
He has a city presentation tonight.
So he did resurface, right?
Yes, I saw him today,
So they're going to give us something we saw, and then we're going to end up. Having said that, though, we'll put you, once again, up towards the front on this to get you in and get you out. Okay? But in the meantime, I stress to the board members and also the ones who aren't here that if you have any questions, please send them to you. And obviously, CC, Sean, and myself as fast as you can so we can, if there's any concern, we can address them.
Thank you.
Okay. Moving on. So we're up to item 6. I'd like to entertain a motion to open the public hearing on proposal of law number 2 before I go any further though. I'd like to make some comments here that we also have privilege of the floor afterwards. These are going to be 2 separate things. And please keep in mind, and CJ can weigh on this, that we plan on closing the public hearing tonight. If we have to reopen it, we will in the future. But we have not sent this to for a 239 review amongst other things, so there really could not be a vote on it tonight anyways. But we do want to hear your comments. I hope also you would follow the same respectful guidance of the privilege of the floor, which means people can make comments. It's not a debate amongst yourselves. We want to hear what your concerns are, and then from there we'll move forward accordingly. So having said that, I'd like to entertain a motion to open the public hearing on proposed local law number 2, 2019, to the town of Lansing to amend the land use ordinance related to solar and wind energy systems proposed to be cited in the town of Lansing, New York.
So,
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? Mrs. Munson?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
So, yes, there might be a sign-up sheet there to put to the floor, which might be mixed together.
May I ask a quick question while she's getting it?
Please do.
The question is actually for you, CJ. You were saying that the big issue was going, the big unresolved issue at the time was going to be the issue of contiguous acreage. Not easy to say. Did that end up in the law being specifically addressed? I skimmed it and I couldn't find it.
Is that currently in the law? So that would be a question that you'd want to talk with. I'm hoping to speak more with Campbell about whether they intend to impose such a limit.
But at the moment, it's not.
That's correct.
Thanks.
Yeah, that's it.
See how well timed that was, Ed?
I could have planned by myself. So the first person we have here on the public hearing sign sheet is Mitch Klein.
Hey, good evening. So my name is Mitch Klein with CS Energy. I've been here a couple times, spoke directly on the floor, so I'm not going to take up too much of time here during the public hearing. But would just like to reiterate, CS Energy, we're very interested in some opportunities that we have seen in the town of Lansing. We have had some initial conversations with folks in the town, and we think that there is both opportunity and interest from the landowners. So we are excited about the possibility of developing large-scale solar. And I think that the law in the current draft form as it's available here tonight and as it was online, I think is going to be a very workable law, something that we would be happy to work with the town to develop a project under. As CJ has mentioned, there's a item of debate around 10 acres of contiguous farmland. I'd just like to reiterate our stance that if there were such a limit placed within the law, we would effectively not be, we would be prohibited from development and would not pursue development in the town. So thank you for your time. As always, I'm available for any more information or questions that you guys might have.
Great, thank you, Mr. Klein. Next, we have Charles Nedrow.
Yeah, I'm going to pass on it this time.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else that would not have, these are the only two I have here for the public hearing. Does anybody else want to make a comment on this before we move to close the public hearing? Okay, state your name.
Mike Lickler, 118 Ross Road. I did speak last time, if you had a hearing about this, so I won't refer to that, but I did want to ask what the process would be to include the Conservation Advisory Council. It seems like this is the kind of thing they would review for their comments and recommendations.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else want to make a comment?
Can I ask a question? Is there a general statement from the Ag Committee about this matter?
Well, we talked about it a lot, and CJ has the comments, but I don't know if they took that into account when they drafted the law. I know Larry Sharpstein's been a great advocate for the farmers, but, taking big amounts of farmland is going to definitely affect their economy. Yes, they're going to get paid for it, but how soon are these projects going to be up and running? And the other part of it is the farmers that lease land are losing a lot of their land because the landowners are looking towards leasing the land to the solar projects. So that's a big concern because they've spent years renting the same farmland and they've put a lot of money into getting that soil up to standard where they can raise good crops. But like I say, they did make comments. CJ has asked for their comments. They've had comments. I just don't know how many of them were paid attention to when you drafted the law or when the law was drafted. So, I mean, sometimes it's tiresome for them to give their input and then it's really just sort of shoved aside. So, that's all I can tell you on that.
Thank you.
Does anyone else want to make a public comment? Came in late, whatever. Well, this is the public hearing, it's open. Bob, you came a little bit late, I know you're busy in the fields. This is the public hearing for local law about the solar and wind. Is there anything you want to make a comment on?
Well, I like to have the opportunity to use my own land for what I want to use it for.
Okay.
So, I mean, even though it's, 200 acres, it's 200 acres, not 10 acres.
Okay.
So I'm trying to keep it all together. Instead of having 10 acres here, 10 acres there, and taking 10 acres there, just to keep it all together. Okay. I like to have my own opportunity to do it, I pay the taxes on it.
Okay. Thank you. See, if anyone else has any comment, CJ, I want to bring you into this conversation, give a little more background as far as how we implement going forward. If the 10 acres were in, if the 10 acres were not in.
Yes.
I think there's some concerns about this as far as that goes, so.
Well, if it pleases the board, I'd be happy to read comments from a member of the Ag Committee. We sent a letter, correspondence to them via email, and Monica Roth, who has significant experience and works for Cornell Cooperative Extension, did say that she thought the key issue beyond the loss of farmland to solar installations, that is, was if farmers have been renting land from landowners, that means the farmers lose access to their land for their farming operation. So that was kind of her overall gist. There was also related to the Nexamp project. You might be familiar with Jerry Smith Road. It was recently approved by the planning board. That's a 5 megawatt project that's just under 25 acres, which is about the threshold for community solar. At least that's where the incentives are at this moment. But that's, they came to the conclusion that that the town should pass solar regulations, and that the county farmland protection board did concur with the recommendations of Tompkins County Planning and Sustainability that prime soils of more than 10 acres be avoided, and I anticipate that will be their continued recommendation. So those are kind of just general comments from the county ag board, and then also cooperative extension. And I do assume that to a degree they do speak for the farming community. So that said, we have what I think are essentially 3 options going forward. Option 1, you don't have to do anything. You can kind of let this lie. The existing land use ordinance does include solar commercial and solar residential as allowed uses. Although they are not defined, so that's, it would be helpful to have some definitions. That would allow the planning board to keep reviewing commercial projects via site plan review, and they can also use the criteria that we developed as part of this. There's no reason why not. It's legitimate site plan review criteria, and we can just keep on using them. That would be fine. And along with that, it would be assumed that county planning would probably continue to make those recommendations for each and every project that came along, just like they did before, to limit the project size to 10 acres or less. So it essentially would give the planning board discretion to say, you know what, we're going to stick with the county's recommendation. We're going to deny this project because it exceeds the 10-acre threshold, and it will be the status quo will continue. That's not a lot of regulatory certainty, both for the town or solar developers though. So that's kind of the trade-off with option 1. Okay. Option 2 is to set the acreage limit. This can be anywhere, call it 10, or in some instances 25 acres might be more reasonable because of course it aligns with the current incentives. We had the opportunity to talk with the assessment department today, and they seem to concur this is a fairly sweet spot for both incentives and what the town will receive as part of the pilot, which would be negotiated on the town's behalf, right? However, it's TBD, to be determined whether this limit would be overruled by a state siting board during an Article 10 process. That type of process, as you know, is projects larger than 25 megawatts, which translates into approximately 125 acres. So projects that are larger than that may or may not be out of our hands. That is pending litigation, and I've asked the town attorney to follow up on that, and hopefully we'll have more information on that soon. And then finally, option 3 is to leave it as is. Don't set an acreage limit. That will allow for utility scale solar, and that will open the door to fairly substantial solar projects here. Most will be sited next to the bulk transmission lines that we looked at in our meeting a couple weeks ago. So those are kind of the 3 options that I see essentially moving forward.
I'd like to hear Mike's answer to Mike's question about setting the conservation by
Oh, yeah, actually, we did discuss that last night at Conservation Advisory Council, and we did include them in our schedule of review. They just happened to not be formed when we actually first started the process. So we've included them, and we actually just spoke about it last night. One of the members did ask me about where to locate the draft, where to send comments, and I referred them to the town clerk or myself, and then we would get the comments onto the town board. But we've actively encouraged all of the boards and committees essentially to reply. And we've done active outreach to both Ag Committee and CAC.
More, Joe?
Are we just going to talk about it here? We're going to close the public hearing, talk about it?
I want to mention a few more things for those who are here. We're in this discussion right now. And one of those is, I guess we can close the public hearing if you want to continue talking about this. A few things I want to add to this. So let's entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
Sure.
Have a second?
I'll second it.
For discussion. Mrs. Munson?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
So,
I guess I'm one of those that's very concerned about the farmland and prime soils, because once they're turned over to an industrial use like this, they don't go back to farmland, even though I know the law has us save the soils and stuff. That's not the likely outcome. I'm really worried about these large projects coming in and the town having no control over them whatsoever, and especially at this time when the state's figuring all this stuff out. And so we don't even know what's going to be done, and I'm worried that our land becomes the test cases of trying this out and not necessarily working through all the bugs of these large ones. And so what I would like to see is us put a 25-acre limit, because I do want to see more of these small systems, and I understand 10 acres is too small to get them. But if we put a 25-acre limit in our zoning ordinance, so that we make a strong statement saying, you have to get a variance in order to change this. You can't just go to the planning board and have them change it. I'd like to see that be the option we take. And that sends a statement to the state, and I know the state can overrule us, but at least tells the state that we strongly don't want these large ones right now. At the future, we might. We might look at how it is being developed and say that works for Lansing. But right now, when all the mistakes are being made, I think we need to take a strong stance there. Let's wait and see how these larger ones develop and what problems develop in them before we open ourselves up to them.
questions, concerns?
I agree with what Joe said about the 25 acre size, but I also am concerned about many 25-acre installations, which can have a similar negative effect on the overall agricultural land availability.
Anything else? A couple things. Anytime you're first, you wish you could learn by somebody else's mistakes, but sometimes it's hard to be the second mouse being the first mouse. And having said that, as Lansing continues to lead in this area, I think I like the board's thoroughness. I too am concerned about the 125 acres triggering an Article 10. Then it's a toy out of our hands. On the other hand,
Perhaps.
perhaps. On the other hand, no, there's never been one.
No solar facilities have been approved through the Article 10 process yet, just 2 large-scale wind facilities. So.
And this is also just on prime land, right? If somebody had terrible land that was over this amount, would that still apply in your opinion, Joe? Or do you-
My understanding is no, we don't have that. It's only primes. My understanding of the way the law is written, I know it's gone through a lot of iterations. If it's not prime farmland, we're not talking about these limits.
And may I just clarify, would that be actively farmed prime soils, or would it be just prime soils, period?
I would look at a similar to the ag exemption rules to kind of model those, because I think those are ones that everybody understands. If you're in an ag exemption, you're farming it, you've got.
Right.
I would use that as a model, because I think that's one that everybody would understand, as opposed to making a different set of rules. So this farm has this set of rules, that farm has this set of rules.
To do prime soils, though, someone would challenge that in court. They would challenge what's the definition of prime soils?
That's a USDA and RCS definition. So, and we have reiterated that in previous versions. We've tied the prime soils to that criteria. They're typically classes of soils that are the best performing, essentially.
So there's a set of criteria that would fall under.
That's correct. The question is, we did confirm with assessment today that there would be an agricultural conversion penalty to go to these commercial systems. There didn't used to be, even if you kept the sheep grazing. That was one key piece that people kept. And at one point, just a couple of years ago, if you kept sheep on the parcel underneath the arrays, you could qualify. But now, assessment has clarified that there is a conversion penalty for moving the land essentially out of active agriculture. And I think Jay said it was a $600 per acre one-time penalty, and then 5 times the taxes saved, I believe, is the penalty for conversion. That's what he mentioned today, assessment director. So
CJ and I met with the county assessor today, and very concerned about the RC, about the environment, very concerned about the prime lands, very concerned about the farmers, very concerned about a variety of other things, also very concerned about the town's tax base. One thing I would propose is we do an analysis as far as what is the financial benefit for the town of Lansing as it goes forward, because we've already passed the law to take this out of exemption if this were doing business. And do the analysis, it might be somewhat illuminating to find out, oh, this, and this. But as we all know, every solar project seems to have to go into a pilot, unless it's residential, and that may counteract it. So at the end of the day, how much of that impact is a benefit of the school's tax base? Because there's negotiations going on right now about the new pilot for the power plant. And where does that go for the next time around? And how does that help our town, our county, our fire protection, everything else with that tax base? Where's the best bang for our buck also on this? And I think we have to look out for the town, amongst other things too. So there's a variety of different boxes we have to check off as we go through this. And that's another one I would love to give the analysis with a community project. The other thing is the feasibility there. We can always revisit this if technology jumps ahead of it and they say, jeepers, you know what, on 50 acres we can generate 400 megawatts. Oh, let's have that conversation then. Because then you're only doing 50 acres as opposed to these things, right? Never there 10, 15 years ago. And having said that, technology, especially if there's money to be made, who's to say that the money's starting to dry up and all of a sudden these things fade? So to go about this in a pragmatic way, I think it's a good way. I'm in no rush to get this thing done because at the end of the day, I want to be able to balance the benefits as opposed to what the risk is on that. So we still have a little homework to do as far as that goes. And in the future, I think we can open up this public hearing again for people as we continue these conversations. The more input that's in here, the better it is for everyone. The other thing I think we talked to Mr. Quine, he had mentioned before what the capacity of the wires are there. How much can you pump in there? That's the other part that we were somewhat concerned about. We may only have a few. We don't know. We also don't know with the power plant, when it does finally mothball, what sort of effect that'll have. We don't know any of these things yet. So slow and steady, I think, is the best way to do this.
And yeah, to that end, the power plant looks like it will be ceasing production as of October 31st. And additionally, on November 6th, I want to mention to you a specific solar siting conference at Pace University Law down in White Plains on the effects on municipal law, state law, and then transactions, solar leasing, and then there'll be a policy discussion. And this looks to be a really helpful event that I think all these things will kind of coalesce around the same time. It looks like kind of in late October, early November, and that'll give me a chance also to continue the analysis as requested by Ed, work with assessment, and try to get some numbers on how these different types of systems could impact the town's tax.
The thing I like about this is that as you try to implement, now you get to serious discussions. This is no longer theory. This is no longer, I hope it turns out this way. This is the harsh reality. And the harsh reality sometimes can be brutal, sometimes can be wonderful, so we'll see. You want to have a comment, Joe?
Yeah, I would disagree on us taking as much time as we can because right now the town's open to these large projects to happen, and I think it would be important for us to hold it back a little bit while we understand whether we want these projects to move forward.
I'm not following you, say first move forward, and say hold back.
We hold back and say we don't want large projects yet, then we can study, see what kind of benefits there are, see what kind of size limits would work for our community, rather than leaving ourselves open for someone coming forward and saying, I want to turn the Kingdom Farm into a big solar array, and we don't necessarily have the ability to say no.
Well, actually you do, because the planning board has to go to the supermajority, doesn't it, CJ?
It would have to go through a supermajority vote in order to override the county's recommendation, which will be a 10-acre limit, so.
So if you have 7 voting members, you're going to have, what's that, 6 out of 7 say yes?
That's correct.
The other thing is that we've already gone through this once already with supermajority. And once again, if you have a supermajority from the planning board to do this, I find it hard pressed that they would say yes to something like this. But once again, I don't want to ram something through also, because of concern.
And I see kind of where you're going here, but you know, Joe's point to the commercial solar is technically allowed by right. It is allowed through site plan review. You still have to go through a review process with the planning board, but the planning board can still use the criteria we've come up with, and we still will have to comply with the county's 239 recommendation. So there is a little bit of balance that exists actually in the current configuration for now, and I would say I would like to work a little bit more with the town attorney on this pending litigation to really understand some of the implications of what that Article 10 litigation is shaking out. I mean, this is really of the moment. It's as state of the art as it gets.
So my last point, that we need to stay away from this. If there's a lawsuit pending, we don't need to run into this and be part of that. Now, once again, you know, the road to hell is paved with good intentions, but if we jump into this, guess what? We're in it too.
Well, and so
Go ahead, you want to keep going on that, that's fine by me, this is all good information. But all these things weigh into that decision, how you want to go slow with this. But on the other hand, it's not like we're postponing it, we're still gathering information on this, so we can think what's best for Lansing, so go ahead, CJ.
yeah, I think in some ways we're in a good spot where we do have the flexibility because of the way our current zoning land use ordinance is written. But we also have, you know, a great town attorney who can help us kind of work through some of these issues and help us understand the impact of that litigation, which is, you know, shaking out in essentially the court system as we speak. So I think all in all, we're in a good place. We can keep working on the draft, bring the financial analysis, work with county assessment to try to get a better handle on the retail scale facilities, the wholesale facilities, and then of course the utility scale facilities. And what kind of impact that would mean essentially to the town, especially in light of the power plant, again, closing on October 31st. We don't know whether that's going to happen yet. There's, you know, the liability study yet to be done. So there's really a lot of interesting moving parts in this piece. So if we can kind of keep it in play for now, that's...
Even if we're going to move forward, you're talking at least 2 months. You're talking about 1 more month before we enter the 239 review. So we've got at least 2 more months, which we can still stay very busy. You have a lot of information in 2 months. It's not like we're going to sit on our hands here and then 2 months later say, oh God, I guess we got to bring this up again.
No, certainly not sitting on our hands, though. There's a lot more information to be gathered because things are changing every day. And additionally, you know, this is a better time of year heading into October and November to get more ag community feedback aside from the kind of official party line, so to speak. So we can continue to engage those committees and the planning board on really crafting the document. So
do you have an idea of a timeline that you'd like to see?
I mean, ideally, I think if we can go back next month, have a better handle on this taxation piece, which I thought was a little more simple, but is certainly not. We'll then have an idea heading towards the end of October about the power plant. We're going to know whether that's going to close, and we're going to have a bit of a better understanding about how that may impact the town's tax base. Because the town will be eligible if the power plant actually shuts down for some mitigation funding for that. So we'll have a better understanding of that. And in early November, as I mentioned, I'll be attending that conference one way or another, either webinar or in person. And I think heading into that, we'll have a better idea kind of how all these pieces are shaking out. Maybe we'll have more information on that litigation. So I would say if we could next month reconvene, look at the data, that we come up with, set another public hearing for November. I think that's a really sweet spot actually for having optimum community engagement, especially from the farming community, and having a chance to really dig through some of these details and letting them work out basically in real time.
What would you send to the county?
We would probably send it then. I'd probably send it in October if we.
If we're comfortable with that.
Yes, of course.
If we're not making the town vulnerable to the lawsuit, if there's a lawsuit, amongst others. There's other variables to push forward. One of the things is, to circle back on this, is that the power plant is being evaluated to see if it needs to stay online or not.
That's correct.
That's a feasibility study going on now. The other one is that perhaps these large solar companies want to partner with the power company, since everything's right there, and go on their 200, I think, 240 acres that are available for that. Now, there's a lot of ways they can get to where they tried this before. Why not have them go there, and it takes the prime farmlands off the table, and you still get the electricity pumping through the wires, which are designed to pump 330 megawatts to begin with. Anybody here, anybody drop a hint here? Or is this just my imagination?
Well, and I think that this is a really interesting clarification that you're seeking to make, because if we limit it to actively farmed prime soils, there's prime soils all over the town. The entire town is basically prime soils. But if we limit it to actively farmed prime soils, then a situation such as a brownfield site or the site at the former power plant or existing power plant, whatever, could be a reasonable spot, because it still has prime soils there, but obviously they're not actively farmed. They haven't been actively farmed,
So, here in history, Fort Hill Road used to be an old dump at the end. Can we get a list of areas together that are not desirable for anything to build there, that maybe solar arrays, solar factories can be put there? Would it be prime farmland? It would be perhaps unusable for anything else except maybe something like that?
Yes, of course. Yeah.
I think there's a few of them out there, not just that one. I think maybe Al from the assessor's office could also be helpful in that area. So when the bigger solar companies come in, you say, here's a list of stuff that's not prime farmland, that really can't be used for anything else except maybe what your project's in. Would you want to consider this? And maybe, hopefully, it's within their half a mile of three-phase power. And that would take the prime soils off the table, and also give them a chance to implement and see how this works.
So we did look at some maps about the distributed energy, and those are pretty much maxed out at the 5 megawatt threshold. Remember the map with the red lines that kind of didn't follow the bulk transmission lines. So those would be where those could be cited, but we can certainly get a list of all the kind of brownfields, opportunity areas, for lack of a better word, but not officially on the list. But anyway, we can get some of these undesirable locations, as you say, that are certainly not prime farmland anyway. Get some maps.
That'd be good for many uses.
Absolutely.
Do we beat that horse enough tonight? Ron, I think it's all good to start. It's like peeling an onion. You get in there layer by layer by layer. So. I guess we'll move on to privilege of the floor. Anyone have any? No one. I'll open it up. Does anybody have any comments they want to use privilege of the floor since no one signed up? If not, we'll move on. From Christine Eisenhut in the packet. Moving on to number 9 is the Lansing Youth Service Report, which is in your packet. Number 10, which is Mike's Service Report from the County Legislature. Mike's not here. Number 11 is Pat Terrell. Is Pat Terrell in the audience? Come on down. Hi, Pat. Good evening.
How are you?
Better now I'm talking to you, my friend.
I'll just touch on a few of these things briefly. our small fry football started and flag football started. Flag has actually got more numbers in this year than it has the last couple, as well as soccer. So both of those are doing very well. We're hosting boys modified games out here this year and practices. Let's see what else. Ithaca College and Cornell Club softball games are also being held out here over the next couple months. In the park, we have several big events coming up. The Veterans Watch Fire is Friday night at 7 o'clock. Encourage everyone to attend. Lisa's Run is this Saturday at Myers Park. This past Saturday, we had a suicide prevention walk in the park. Very well attended, and they raised a lot of money. And hopefully this will become an annual event down there in the park. As far as the security cameras go, we are still getting some quotes on that, so we're still working on that, but that's moving forward as well. Finished the Salt Point plant plots, which was a bigger project than expected, but it is finished now, so that's something that we are glad is off our plate. We've ordered some ceilings for a couple of the pavilions to make those look a little better. And hope to have those completed within the next couple of weeks. Wonderful. Any questions?
What do you attribute the increase in small fry football?
Well, not small fry,
The
flag.
flag.
I don't really know. Class sizes are a little bit bigger, and you know, the friend groups get into certain sports, and that seems to work out well. So glad to see that number is increasing. So hopefully we can keep small fry around because those numbers are quite low. So
I'm sure we'll have more discussion later on some of these items that are near to your heart.
yes.
What
Thank
is
you.
the plan for hydrilla?
Oh, hydrilla, yes, I'm sorry, I forgot to mention that. It was found next door at Finger Lakes Marina. We've had a couple groups come in and do presentations. They were at the park for the fishing derby. We have weed boxes in place at the park behind the launch building, so if people get weeds or anything on their trailer or their boat, prop, whatever, they can chuck those in the box and we dispose of them. We have signage up as well. We also have hoses so people can wash down whatever material they might have on their boat.
But there's no plans for
There's
chemical
currently,
treatment or anything?
no, not that I've heard of from the DEC as of yet. I'm sure this is going to be a bigger problem going forward, and it's going to become more problematic as we go into the future, I'm sure.
We have some people that scuba dive in the area. Is there any reconnaissance underwater?
Not
How
that
widespread
not,
population is?
not that I've heard of.
My understanding is it's basically going to be throughout the lake that isn't already. It's a big wash it up all up the side of the lake. And it's just a question of when it starts growing up and you see it.
Right.
There's a lot of it on the bottom and you're not seeing because it's a little plant at the bottom. But
Right.
when you see it, it's a real problem.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's here to stay.
Yeah.
Well, I was just wondering how well the chemical treatment has actually worked in other places, like Union Springs did a.
It cuts it back, it doesn't slow it down. Basically, it spreads so easily that if you don't get every little stream area where it's caught, it just spreads around again. And it's in the lake and it's so spread out that we're not going to get rid of it. It's just a question of controlling it from now on.
Yeah, I don't even know if we're going to be able to do that effectively.
Well, Florida effectively controls it, but it's a $30 million project.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Next comes Highway Superintendent report.
Don't really have a lot to report. We're in full swing. If folks got any questions, I'm happy to answer them. But other than that, our projects that we talked about last month are in full gear. So,
You're doing a little overtime with all your main breaks?
yes. that doesn't help.
So Brickyard was one of those that doesn't have the casing on it, right? Doesn't have the covering on it yet? Yeah. Because it's so acidic there, it's just.
It just etches into it?
Yeah.
That's the second time this year you've dug up Brickyard. Is there going to be some longer
That's
range?
about the 17th match.
Yeah.
Second time I've seen you dig it.
That plan's in motion, we'll be entertaining 400 or 500 foot replacement there sooner than later.
Tired of getting up in the middle of the night and fixing pipes?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll move on then to CJ.
So I'll just try to be brief with the written report. Let's see, where do we go to? So Salt Point Farm Brewery and Tasting Room is likely to receive preliminary and final approval this coming Monday. We are working with Parks and Recreation on our scope of work for potential Parks, Recreation, and Trails Master Plan. I believe I had mentioned this to you last month that we could talk about this in brief, and you should have received a printed copy as well as an email about this. We've sketched out essentially a preliminary scope of work, but essentially we want to seek a significant public input, review all the existing conditions and plans that we currently have in place, possibly establish a Parks and Recreation Trails Advisory Committee to kind of help in this process, develop an action plan and capital improvement plan to go with those facilities, and to help us plan new facilities, new trails, new parks. And essentially we've come up with a scope of work which includes inventorying all of those facilities, collecting existing data, and getting some map deliverables, a public engagement plan, analyzing all the needs and trends going forward, having some public workshops related to that, and then of course the master plan and the capital improvement implementation strategy along with that. So I just sent it out to Pat, and so hopefully we'll have some comments here within the next few weeks, and of course please send me all your comments on the proposed scope of work. Our intention is to use the existing capital budget to be able to implement this project, along with joint funding from planning and Parks and Recreation to kind of supplement the rest over approximately 18-month process we have in mind. So that's really exciting, and we hope to do that in the week of hopefully winning the money for Myers Park from the state. We should hear about that the second week of December. So we've also coordinated with the court regarding the JCAP, which the resolution is in front of you this evening. So thank you for your consideration there, and for helping out with securing additional stormwater review services from Tompkins County Soil and Water Conservation District. As you know, they're working with Highway on some other projects, and it would be great to really have them in our wheelhouse. They're very inexpensive and reliable source for secondary stormwater review. They help us with the Stormwater Coalition. They're very familiar with MS4 requirements, and PS, sometimes our town engineers have conflicts of interest, so it would be super great to have them as a quote backup service. And just to touch briefly on the solar energy local law, we did host a public information session, as you may know, on August 7th. It was pretty well attended. And then we did do targeted research, outreach to the landowners along that bulk transmission line. We anticipated they may be the most affected by that. So Sue, our ever reliable and capable code clerk, made a ton of phone calls and emails to landowners along that transmission line to try to get the word out to them, essentially. So another big news I just wanted to mention is that two things. Finally, heard from NYSEG, and they approved the siting of the TCAT bus shelter. So that's very nice. We'll have it hopefully soon. We'll coordinate with TCAT. And also, to that effect, the crosswalk. We've had a number of discussions with Highway and with also town engineer and the state about where to place the crosswalk, and they've come to the conclusion that the crosswalk would be most appropriate from TCAT across to essentially the edge of Salt Point's property line, rather than have it located on Woods Edge. The state transportation department was just not comfortable with having two uncontrolled crosswalks within such close proximity, essentially, which is reasonable. And the super good news that goes along with that is that we don't have to put in a whole new permit to actually amend that. They'll just go ahead and just amend the existing permit that allows the Woods Edge crossing and transfer that right down the road. So super great. And to that end, we also have gotten a final scope of work from SRF engineers to do the town center traffic impact study that we accepted the money from Tompkins County for to be able to do through the Municipal Housing Affordability Grant Program. And so we hope to execute that project soon and have that done within the next probably 8 to 10 weeks or so. So that would be really great to have a lot of good data coming out of that will help inform our future plans there. And I think that's the highlights, but if there's anything else you'd like to know.
Well, I'd just like to comment on the PCAP thing.
Sure.
My understanding is where we left it is Cricket was willing to pour a pad for that if they paid for it, and they agreed to pay for it. And so I just want to make sure that you got that information. Are you still able to pour that pad? So what we're going to do is we're going to pay for it. They're going to pay for the materials.
Yes. Yeah, I worked on another project elsewhere in the county, and that's the agreement they've made with most of the municipalities, which is pretty nice.
Okay,
And
that
as
was
long
made
as-
before you were hired on, so I want to make sure you understood, and I want to make sure you were still okay with that. It's been 9 months, 10 months,
Year and a half.
something like that.
Yeah.
Okay, so I just want to make sure that's moving forward, because I really want to see that bus stop come in, hopefully before the bad weather, because, yeah.
Yep, we're coordinating as best we can with Megan Pulver and TCAT and Matt Yarrow and TCAT, and we have a good working relationship with them, and we'll keep that moving.
Keep me in the loop, please. 'Cause,
Absolutely.
Absolutely. On this agreement with the Soil and Water District, I'm looking at the contract, and number 2, it says the code enforcement officer is the town's stormwater management officer. I was not sure if we made you stormwater management officer a while back, or made you partially that or something.
That was floodplain administrator, but
Okay, I couldn't remember which was which.
that's okay.
Let's keep this separate.
No,
No, it's a great question.
I just want to make sure this is accurate before we move forward on it.
Yes, absolutely. Linda, again, a very capable code enforcement officer, is also the town's designated stormwater management officer.
Okay, I just want to make sure that we're keeping it forward.
So,
Perfect.
Any
Those are my questions.
comments? No. Well, a couple of things to wrap this up. Thank you for moving the road over on Woods Edge and the fence, right? The fence is there. People are concerned about foul balls, whatever, but I don't know if they've made foul balls before, but we're more concerned about the kids running across there. The other thing is the sidewalk, which you shared some concerns about, which has been addressed. It's now going to be on their side, on the Salt Point side. You guys work out how you want to, what material and how you want to do it, because now we'll be responsible for. I think the DOT wanted to put in there right away. Thank you, Patrick, for volunteering.
Oh, yeah.
You might get a special toy for that if you're okay, nice. But having said that, so the sidewalk will go on the other side, so as you see the sidewalk come down Louisville Lane, and then it goes this way, it's going to just mark that quite nice. And the Hesses are very happy with it, even if it has to go on their land. Because then it'll tie into the path that goes back there, to the crosswalk over here, to the bus stop over there. Whereas they're singing louder, the sun will be brighter, and they're going to have fun. Which brings one more thing, gentlemen. We have water at the pavilion now.
Yes.
Just waiting for our friends at NICEAG to give us the electricity.
We discussed it there.
We're working on
I look forward to this. I look forward to the solution. Okay.
And who makes the crosswalk? Does the state put in the crosswalk because it's on a state road, or is Cricket doing it?
Is Cricket doing it, painting it?
Yes.
the crosswalk.
Perhaps Cricket can answer that question.
Probably we'll work with one of our municipal partners to help us out with that. I mean, it's not a huge project, but
So we don't know yet.
I will take care of it, like I said. I mean, yes.
Someone will paint it.
11 o'clock at night on some Saturday, we'll be out there with a bucket of paint.
Okay, good enough. Thank you, CJ. Moving on, engineers report. There's nothing to report here, which is good. Next is the agriculture committee report. Connie, good to see you.
I don't really have much to report because we haven't been meeting because everybody's been farming. So they're just trying to keep their heads above water. One bad thing in the news this week is now they want to ban chocolate milk in the New York City schools. So that's another slap in the face to our dairy farmers. So that's about all I have. We're going to have to figure out another place to meet. We may have to meet here. We may have coffee and donuts. I don't know. I got to figure that out. I'm not planning on meeting much before the end of October or something like that because they're all pretty busy. But anyways, here's just a couple of things for you, everybody to think about. This was a quote from John F. Kennedy. The farmer is the only man in our economy who buys everything at retail, sells everything at wholesale, and pays the freight both ways. The other thing, without farming, you all would be hungry, naked, and sober.
Thank you. I just got something in the mail 2 weeks ago about over in Trumansburg. They have the farms for sale. I'm going to either subdivide it, whatever, in just the lots.
Yeah.
I mean, they just sell it, right? They just sell it,
Right.
that's it.
And if you have enough, if you take enough knockdowns, pretty soon that's what you're going to do. And then where are we going to get our food? Where are we going to get our clothes? Where are we going to get anything? Because whether people want to believe it or not, farming is the backbone of this country. So, you can drive the farmers out all you want to, but in the end, you're going to suffer.
Okay, thank you.
Just a little something to think about.
Good to
Thank
see you again. Next item. Town clerk presents the tentative 2020 Town of Lansing budget. We all got it, right?
Can you go over the timeline on the budget process, please?
Yeah. Let her do her thing first, okay?
Okay.
Okay, I think everybody has the tentative fiscal year 2020 for Town of Lansing budget. So I'm just formally presenting this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think you did a really good job.
Presenting.
Yeah.
Get raised. In the Bible.
We have 5 minutes here. We're going to come over on the air. So, on page 6 is where it starts in your magazines. I'll walk you through this real quick. And they do this every year. They have 2 different numbers here, 2 different dates. And one of them pertains to Westchester and Monroe counties, and the rest pertains to the rest of the towns and villages, and I guess in New York State. So, and then like I said, everyone has this. It's on page 6 it starts. And so, the town clerk presents the tentative budget to the town board at a regular or special town board meeting held on or before October 5th. Okay, that's been done. And then from there, the town board reviews the tentative budget and may modify it. Changes, you don't need to write it down. This is in your.
I don't want the longer version.
No, okay. Changes may be in writing, approved by a majority vote of the town board by resolution, and included in the minutes of the town board meeting. During its review, the town board may call on department heads and budget officers to explain their estimates. The tentative budget review may be adjourned and continued at later meetings, but the town board should be aware of impending deadlines in the budget process and complete its review in a timely manner. What does that mean? It means once the town board finishes reviewing the tentative budget, it needs to approve it and any modifications made to it. Once approved, the tentative budget now becomes the preliminary budget and must be filed with the town clerk. Town clerk must make as many copies available for public distribution as the town board directs. At this point, no changes should be made to the preliminary budget until the town board conducts a public hearing. So, the reality is that now you have this in front of you. Now the process goes where you can meet with the department heads, you can discuss things, you have questions. I mean, Joe, you sent some out already. Other people can send them out also. And then at our next meeting, which will be the 16th of October, we can transfer this over to the preliminary budget. We have a special meeting scheduled for November 6th, I think that's a Wednesday, right after Election Day. And that's when we'll have the public hearing, and then that's when we'll approve the budget. There's your timeline. So if you have questions, comments, concerns, like some people have already, please share them. There were some involved there. I think Patrick can answer some of those also, like when we met. Same thing with cricket. Same thing with Deb, if people have questions for that also. And you can discuss it then with them and via back and forth mail, and we can try to dedicate most of our next meetings to support the budget. And just basically get something finalized then to transfer it to the preliminary.
I'd also like to invite the public to give us feedback on this budget because it's the town's budget, not ours. And I'd like to hear what people have to say on it. Is it available on the website? Can people see that?
Yes.
It is, but once again, those changes may be made, and then of course we make available copies after. I mean, either way, it's fine. I mean, if it's on the website now, they can make comments.
Yes.
There's nothing wrong with that. It's also on, that will be fine.
Okay,
I think we've done it in the past, haven't we? Have copies for people, it's not the first
Right,
time.
there's copies right on the back table.
Yeah, I know.
I had a bunch of them on there tonight. But I just want to make it clear, my understanding at least, so at the next meeting, you're going to dedicate a lot of it to the budget, which is fine, but that's also when you need to have a resolution to adopt the changes and to move it to preliminary, just so everybody's clear that you're not going to just talk about it at the next meeting.
Right.
You're going to move on it.
It's moving to the next stage.
Yeah.
It doesn't finalize until November.
But we have to
We
move
have to turn it into.
Right.
The
And if you're
preliminary
gonna do-
budget, or is that what it's called?
Preliminary.
Right.
And if you're going to talk about it a lot, you also need to be ready to have, if they need to, those changes need to be in writing and the resolution needs to be passed to adopt whatever changes you're talking about.
Correct.
So it could be a little tricky to do all of that. And you might, I'm just saying that you might want to be doing the questions
A lot of
and answers
pre-work.
ahead of time.
Yes.
Yes.
I started.
Yes.
We've done this in the past also, where we make even minor tweaks at the end
Correct.
to do that. But mostly it's to say, well, where this number come from? Where this number come from? One of the things I'll share with you is that there's $45,000 in there for the bulkhead. Bulkhead is that, as you go into the marina, it's that wall there, that's in the grant. I have a bit of a concern putting that in there and keeping it there because that isn't really, as you try to go through a ZBB, a zero-based budget, that's not an annual expense. On the other hand, that's something, if the grant isn't approved,
You
it's
still
not,
need a
It's not in the grant.
it's not in the grant?
It's not in the grant. That's the one thing they got pulled out of the grant.
Please disavow what I just said. This is why we have these discussions, okay? The other things that we discussed, 5-year plans, 10-year plans, 15-year plans. As you know, Crick and I have done, the last 3.5 years with the 14-year plan, the other plans for equipment. We talked to Patrick about this, about the 3-year plans and everything. And I reviewed my notes, and Joe, I don't want to deprive you of an experience. So I would ask you and CJ to work together on a 5-year capital plan because you keep coming back to a 5-year plan. So you and CJ can work on that to see if you can come up with things. The thing about a 5-year plan, which I know they say it in County 101 when you go to these meetings, is that I think CJ kind of expressed it very well, is that a lot of times bigger cities would do these things as opposed to us. And that's a situation where I think we can weed out what we do need and what we don't need. And as we keep asking the department heads, what do you need? That's something that I think the two of you can work together on and come up with something. If, I'm not big just for spending money, but is there something that is something we can project down in the future? Once again, we also talked to CJ about our need assessments for the highway department. And we'll be moving forward on that. So those are things we can discuss a little further. I know you want to say something, so go ahead.
I'll just say that Pat put together a really nice budget explanation that he passed out 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. I'm not sure when this came to us.
Is that for equipment or about a month ago?
About a month ago, yeah. But it gives us a lineup of here's the equipment, here's the timeline that we expect to replace it, so that I can actually see what's being thought of, what's coming up, what you're asking for now fits into the overall budget. And that really helps me a lot, see the general picture that I know you've got in your head, but I'm just seeing, oh, you got $45,000 this year.
Right.
That's a surprise to me, but looking over this, I can see how it fits into a well thought out plan, and that really helps a lot, and I appreciate it.
And that's been a process for a while, just that you weren't on board, on the board, I should say, before then. Same thing with cricket, when we went through every piece of equipment. We went into that 14-year plan with those big trucks because they were expensive. We stretched them out. Those 7 trucks would be 14 years as you go through those. Those are things that we've worked on for a few years, so you don't have the spikes. I'm not throwing stones at people who've done the budget before. I mean, just that this is a nice way to keep it level so we don't have surprises down the road. And once again, if something comes up in between that, that's when we have serious discussions as far as if something's needed. And some of these trucks sometimes can last 15 years. It's amazing. So these are something we've already implemented. It's been in place for a variety. And I think cricket, you're what, 2/3 of the budget, something like that, or as far as you're up there as far as it goes. So once you get that piece stabilized and you get the recs piece stabilized, and it's not minimizing the judges or the planning or the rest, you don't get the big waves.
They have the big toys.
I will say it wasn't always done that way.
I got other check. You got
A
it.
long time ago,
Oh,
we had to borrow money for some of those big ticket items because we didn't have this plan.
they did a bond for $650,000 for 3 trucks.
Yep.
Once again, not throwing stones because at that time the money was great and everything, and that was them. I've never thrown stones at the previous administration because I know they got the town of Lansing at heart. But these are different times right here, and I think I'd rather have a little ripple than have to say an OMG. So, anyways. So talk back and forth. There may be something here I've missed. I always like to have 6, 8 more eyes on it. I'm all good for that.
So what would you like to do in the process in terms of making amendments to this? How would you like to set that process? Because I'd like to make some changes here and there, and I know we want to discuss it amongst all of us, but I want to open the process where people can understand what changes were proposed and
Well, you may do a working meeting. And the working meeting would not be next week and would not be the week after. There's events going on. Would it be the week after that? So we're in the 16th, we do a working meeting on the 9th. That Wednesday. Or we can do a working meeting on a different day. We can do a working meeting on a Monday night. If,
Monday nights are hard.
I understand that, right, for everybody, but once again, it's a Wednesday on the, I guess there's a reason why I brought this.
I don't know my calendar without looking. You're saying,
I'm just
the
suggesting,
night, you're suggesting the night?
I'm suggesting, I think, if you get one good working meeting in
Yeah, it
here,
gives us 2.5 weeks.
where you can hash it out, like October 9th,
That's fine.
is that fine with the clerk? Can we give you enough time to post it and everything? 'Cause,
Yeah, that's fine.
She loves extra meetings.
well, we're down to one now, so that's not a bad thing. But if we can do it on the 9th, I think that'd be nice to have a nice discussion, bounce stuff back and forth as far as we go and see where things are. The other thing is that if we do suggestions at that time, it gives Charmaine a chance. Also, as we found out,
Prepare some answers.
but also things change
Yeah.
with the assessments. Sometimes the information's not there yet as we keep going, and we get a much clearer picture going forward.
6:30 as usual?
I think that would be good. So on the 9th of, in the meantime, please talk to the different department heads. I think they could also probably explain why this, and this. Let's put that down for October 9th at 6:30.
I just put it in my calendar so I won't forget.
And we'll call that, I think, a working budget meeting.
Okay.
I'm sure something else will make its way on onto the agenda between now and then.
Well, in all fairness, I don't want it to, only because normally we wouldn't have another meeting. I want to dedicate it just to the budget. so that we're in a comfort zone, so that all of a sudden, at our next meeting on the, 16th, is that what it is, a week later? We give our clerk enough time for these resolutions, because, we say we want this, this, and this, okay, meanwhile, 90% of it's left to the other people to do it. So I think if we work on the 9th, we might be able to give enough time, especially if we massage this ahead of time, okay? What else?
I think that's great. I really like the idea of this, a full meeting to talk
Yeah.
about the budget.
Well, we were going to, actually, it was scheduled at our last working meeting, which was about the solar law. And we said, okay, that's nice, but we don't have anything to discuss yet, so I think we had the right thought process, we just had the wrong date. So we can move on. 17, motion authorizing Park and Recreation Supervisor to purchase new computers, upgrade to Windows 10. Patrick, you're on now. This is something that was not planned, it came out of left field because they stopped this type of stuff. I mean, otherwise, on the other hand, is this something that should come out of our reserve for the technology, or where do you think you'd recommend it?
That's up to the board as a whole. You know, you can pull out a fund balance, but that's fine too. But it's just something that has to be done. January 14th, I believe, is the cutoff date for Windows 7, and unfortunately, a lot of our computers are older in the building and are running Windows 7. So
Didn't we pass something like this at our last meeting?
we discussed
We
it.
discussed it, but not formal.
We really go
Okay.
forward.
We would formalize it.
Okay.
I'm fine.
This is, I think this is actually the result of our last discussion.
I'll move it.
I will move, I'll second it. Katrina's moving it, I'm seconding it.
Better buckle up, here we go.
I think if we try to take it out of the reserve, at this time, it has to go to a referendum. If we go through the budget process, it
Correct.
doesn't. So I
Correct.
think we need to just take it straightforward this
Efficient.
time.
Yeah.
Correct.
So does this need to, in the motion, I did not state where the money is coming out of. Do I need to do that?
Oh, I think it should say it's coming out of the fund balance.
Out of funding?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because we don't have another place that quick and easy for me to pull it out of and sit down the budget for a few minutes to find. money.
Well, let me save you some time. There is no other place to pull out unless you want to go besides the general fund, unless you want to. Correct? Correct. So I just saved you now. Okay? So,
I'll add that in, that it's coming out of the fund
Yes.
balance.
Okay.
and then there's a line item that I'm sure it'll go into. Michelle may want to know that, right? I'm sure it'll go into the.
There's an equipment for parks, or is this not just?
This is
parks?
general
technology.
town.
This is compliant. So
I have a budget where you can see that. Pat, you have any suggestions that you want to see in?
let me show them the right page here.
Are you doing the spreadsheet version?
No, I'm going third.
So if we go to equipment, which is 1610.200.
You're talking A?
Yes.
Yep. Okay.
1610, what was it?
4,200.
Page 2 at the bottom.
0.200, which is
Under equipment.
basically,
Yep.
basically technology equipment.
That works for me. So we do a budget modification and add money to that now? Okay, so that would be part of this and not part of our budget modifications at the end, we do them separately like that.
You want to do 6, you want to do half a dozen, either way.
As long as it's done properly, I don't mind either way.
Either way is proper. You can do either way, so we can do it right now.
Okay, so,
Get the motion right now, and there's a, you have up to amount?
There was one,
Yes,
two.
not to exceed 22,000.
There you go. Okay, there you go. So we've had discussion. Any further discussion?
if Debbie has the motion down, I know we've been talking all over.
I have it, 100%.
Well, the motion's,
Motion is just as I've written it,
yeah,
plus
it's right in here.
that the money will be coming out of the fund balance and it will be transferred into a 1610.200 equipment.
Yep, that'd be helpful. Good. All right, so we have a second, and we have no more discussion, so I guess something Mrs. Munson.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Okay, number 19, resolution requesting reduction of speed limit on Collins Road. Then number 18, resolution requesting reduction of speed limit on Collins Road. Yes.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? Mrs. Munson?
Katrina Binkowitz?
Yes.
Joseph Wetmore?
Yes.
Edward Levine?
Yes. Number 19, resolution establishing 2020 water rates for Town of Lansing Consolidated Water District. Anyone like to make a motion to move that forward?
Sure.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? Mrs. Munson?
Katrina Binkowitz?
Yes.
Joseph Wetmore?
Yes.
Edward Levine?
Yes. Number 20, resolution authorizing issuance of a notice of award and execution of design and installation, construction contract for new town hall digital sign.
I'll move that.
Second.
Further discussion? I'll briefly say that thanks to Mike Sigler, we talked about this and he suggested that I write a grant for a certain company, which I did. And that was the 20 of the 50,000, which is appreciated. Still a lot of money, but it's not as much as it was before. And to him, Mike's not here, because I can thank him personally for that. Also, part of our moving into the 21st century, Patrick, right? This was a concern you wanted a few years ago. We now have the SWIFT 911. We have a variety of other ways we can reach out to people. This is another one. And as you know, the attitude is you try 6 different ways to communicate, and one of them actually will be received by people. And this is something you can do from inside here, right? Not that we don't want to.
Correct.
And it's going to be the same frame, same everything,
Same box.
same footprint.
Yep, same footprint, same
And we're
post.
not gonna get too creative.
We will not be overly creative.
No war and peace,
We
please.
will not be overly flat. How about that?
Can you do it remotely?
Yes,
That's even better.
right from our desk.
No, but you can do it from home. Can you do it from home? And log in?
That I'll have to check on.
That'd be really good, especially for
Yes.
emergency storage stuff, to
Yeah,
be able to wherever you
yeah,
are.
from your phone and from Cougar County, that'd be impressive. Do they have cellular out there? I think they do, don't they?
Yeah.
Probably some places better than Lansing.
Yes.
Like my house.
Okay, enough said about that. Mrs. Munson?
Katrina Binkowitz?
Yes.
Joseph Wetmore?
Yes.
Edward Levine?
Yes. Okay, next one is the, item number 21, is resolution supporting the Justice Court Assistance Program 2019-2020 grant application for the town of Lansing.
It's moved.
Second.
CJ, this is all you.
So the town board had asked us to look into some possibilities for funding the upgrades to the entrance of town hall to make it more ADA accessible. And so we put our heads together and said, Justice Court Assistance Program, we can get up to $30,000 for this through that program. So I've been working with Justice Howell, who's been great about getting me information about caseloads and all kinds of information I need for the grant application. Lynn has been working to get the estimates on what it will cost, taking photos, and I think we finally have a near complete application, and with this, we can go ahead and submit that before the deadline of October 10th.
So are more disabled people getting arrested?
It's not quite.
Well, not just that, I'm trying to come to use I'm trying to find some seriousness here. When people come in and want to use, for instance, the clerk's office or somebody else's office, those two doors, it's one thing to come in and say, can you open up, these doors can be opened. It's another thing to try to get through both those doors, even though they are ADA compliant, to have somebody do that. Either they swing open or they'll slide. I don't know if we have a final design on which way to go. We went from Cadillac to be really careful how much you want to do here. On the other hand, I think that 30,000, if we do get the grant, would be quite helpful.
You also were talking about a clerk's office window for ADA out to the hallway. Is that part of this?
No, this is a different discussion. I think that was there to maybe buy time until we found a way to solve this problem. Those we didn't know, I mean, this didn't gel yet, so that was like, if somebody came in, they could at least wave to them and say, I'm here, or whatever, because one time you had an experience where you couldn't see the person.
Yeah,
And,
I've had a few experiences. Yeah.
yeah,
And just to be clear, the reason why our plan group just support the assistance program is because they do allow upgrades to essentially a shared facility. So if it benefits the court, then the town can benefit also, and they would essentially be contributing $30,000 towards the overall cost of the project through this particular grant program.
Which is answering the question that I asked, was this advanced trust?
When would the notice be given to us of an award, and when will we actually be able to spend the money?
Okay, so that would be early 2020 that we would hear back about the whether we were awarded the grant. So a couple months.
So that's why I would like to put that grant in the in the 2020 budget, which of course, if we don't get the grant, we would change things thusly. But I think as part of the budgetary process, we show what our intentions are. Our intentions are to get this grant through the door. And there's a line for grants, and there's a line for equipment upgrades. So that's why I'm looking to put something like that in.
if you want to pay the price, you may want to get out of the equipment reserve. That's what reserve is there for, it's going to be very pricey.
Equipment reserve or?
Building reserve.
Right.
Building reserve.
There's a $50,000.
Building, right?
Yeah, it's a $50,000 expense, so 30 of it would come from the grant money, and 20 of it would come from some other source. And I'd like to get that all into the budget.
Well, once again, I mean, it can be an estimate, we don't know what the price of the door will be. That's what my concern is, maybe when Doug comes back from, we can go from there, I don't know what the estimate would be, or allocation would be. But that, once again, when you go to the ZBB, right, zero-based budget, you want to be pulling these things, one-time things. That's why we loaded all those reserves for this type of thing. And that's what they're there for. We try to avoid all the spikes.
Right.
And, okay, and that's what it's there for. Now, some people argue, well, you take it out and put it back in. You're absolutely right. But as we continue to move forward and give more value to our citizens, at some point, if there's something down the road we need a project for 2 or 3 years down the road, that's not critical like this is, because there's a time frame for this, right? If we don't use this money, as with all grants, I'm sure there's expiration date on it.
I don't recall on this one. I can find out though.
There will be. We don't need to.
I'm sure there is, but
I'm sure there
I
is.
can find out what it is for you.
When we get the grant, we can figure that
So
out.
I
We've
think-
also had the opportunity to take potential fund balance money that would have gone to that reserve and just directly apply it
Right.
and not put it in the reserve.
All right, so let's circle back to, as these pieces keep coming, okay? We don't know, for instance, on some of these revenue streams, where they are,
Right.
okay? And some of these revenue streams, we have budgeted conservatively, like mortgage tax last year, okay? We budgeted $250,000 for that, because that's conservative, and it used to be $200,000. Last year, it came back to $529,000. So there's something that, hopefully by our next meeting in October, we'll have clarity there. I'm not expecting it, don't get me wrong, but we had this thing with the grade out, and that was one of the plans, and we had an excellent sales tax, and this is the time when we jumped on it, when we could have said, let's put $50,000 aside. We had an exceptional sales tax year, and we moved that forward so that $500,000 machine is just about taken care of. So that's one of the things that we do. So these are all good conversations to have to see where this money comes from, and I think we've decided on that we're going to move forward. My only thing is that how much is this door going to be? Maybe that's where Lynn and Doug can give us some more clarity, since I think he's in charge of that. And you were going to say something.
Yeah, I believe that the final estimate came to $48,000, of which $30,000 would be covered by the grant, by the JCAP. The funds would be distributed on or before April 1st, 2020, and funds are required to be spent within 180 days from receipt.
Thank you.
That would be good during the summer.
So I think we have the numbers to put in the budget. The real question is where we take it out of. If we want to take it out of reserve fund, I'm fine with that, as long as they have a plan for replenishing it over some period of time.
I look forward to your email.
Okay.
Okay, so circle back to, we have a motion and a second, correct?
Correct.
And we've had a thorough discussion.
Yes.
There's nothing else. Mrs. Munson?
Katrina Binkowitz.
Yes.
Joseph Buckmore.
Yes.
Edward Levine.
Yes. Number 22, resolution authorizing execution of agreement with Tompkins County Soil and Water Conservation District for stormwater technical services.
That's all moved.
I'll second it.
CJ, you want to give us a little more background on this while we're doing this?
Yeah, so the town retains TG Miller PC, they're an engineering firm, and we use them for much of our stormwater review services. And as you know, we're an MS4 community, meaning we have obligations to report to the state regarding our stormwater practices, in essence. And individual projects require, some individual projects require stormwater technical review. So in essence, they review a stormwater pollution protection plan. So in essence, sometimes TG Miller PC works on many different projects all throughout the county. Developers frequently hire them. And so what we're doing is anticipating that TG Miller will at some point come into a conflict of interest where they are representing a developer or some other entity, and the town will need stormwater review services. And Tompkins County Soil and Water Conservation District is more than qualified. Both people that I would be corresponding with and Lynn would be corresponding with are both CPESC certified, so that's John Negley and Angel Heinickel. And they provide these services to at least 5 or 6 other municipalities in Tompkins County. We would just be kind of part of that, essentially collaborative. That's it.
Paragraph 9 says this agreement shall be effective January 1st, 2020, shall terminate on December 31st. And then it says the agreement will be retroactive to September 20th, 2019 to cover incurred expenses. And I was trying to understand what that meant.
That just means that if we receive a project through the end of this year, we can go ahead and submit that to them for review, and then this will apply going forward as well.
There are no incurred expenses.
No, there's no incurred expenses. This is anticipatory.
And hopefully there'll be none between now and Friday.
I've been anticipating between now and Friday, no.
If no further discussion, Mrs. Munson.
Katrina Binkowitz?
Yes.
Joseph Whitmore?
Yes.
Edward Levine?
Yes. Item 23, resolution approving and authorizing execution of town center lease to Cursat Landscaping Corp., subject to permissive referendum.
I'll move that.
Any further discussion? Mrs. Munson?
Katrina Binkowitz?
Yes.
Joseph Whitmore?
Yes.
Edward Levine?
Yes.
I'll move that.
Mrs. Munson?
Was it a second? Joe?
Yes.
Katrina Binkowitz?
Yes.
Joseph Whitmore?
Yes.
Edward Levine?
Yes. Board member report, let's keep it to like 5 minutes if we can. Go ahead, Katrina.
Just want to reiterate that the South Point project did finally get fully installed, and the water trailer that we okayed was extremely useful and will continue to be with the fall town planting. So it was a good purchase. And we put a lot of plants in, and we still have some money to spend on some more plants for the fall planting.
Does the South Point group have any wish list for next year?
I think we'd like a few more members to help maintain the projects that have been put in.
The R&D is working on quality as fast as they can for you. There are limits.
There are limits.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anything else?
There was no ZBA meeting.
Okay. Good. Joe?
Tompkins County Council of Governments, we reviewed civil service law for everybody, and then we had a long discussion on short-term rental legislation. We looked at what the town of Ithaca is doing and what the village of Cuba Heights are doing, they're both implementing laws, and we should be considering this as something to talk about. This is something you should think about for next year, because the county is going to be getting us data on how many short-term rentals we have in each of the municipalities, so that'll start to give us an idea of how it's impacting the town, and do we want to implement any laws regulating it in any way.
You talking about Airbnbs?
Yep.
Okay. As opposed to what would be a short-term rental? 2 years, 3 years?
They're talking days and months. I mean, one of them has a 3-month threshold, one
Right.
has a 1-month
1
threshold.
week to 3 months.
Yeah, no, they're talking about those short-term rentals.
Okay.
Which affects the housing stock, it affects the neighborhood, it changes things. And It's an up-and-coming issue, and we want to be proactive on it before it becomes a problem.
Kind of fascinating that the village of Lansing is 71% rentals. So, I don't know how many of those will be long-term. I'd love to find out how many of those stay more than 5 years in one area, or 2 years, but anyways. Anything else?
Keep the Lake watershed, they're starting to put together a project advisory committee to help them push through their Department of State grant. The Ithaca Tompkins County Transportation Council, I wish they had names that were easier to spell out. They're talking about the Ludlow Bridge project, which is going to be delayed apparently until next year.
Yep.
And it's starting to push up against Salmon Creek Bridge project. And apparently the state and the county weren't talking about who's going to do which project when. And so we could find ourselves seeing both bridges close at the same time.
That's what I heard.
Yes.
Well, I didn't say anything because it could change again. Again.
And the county doesn't even have a full plan yet for the Salmon Bridge that they can put forward. So I'm pushing them to talk with each other. Let's see if we can't have this all worked out in advance, so that we don't have both bridges closed at the same time, which will be a real problem for northern Lansing. And, you know, the community was promised that they would get to see the plan for the Ludlow Bridge. And so the county needs to come forward with that promise.
They haven't denied him yet.
Well, yeah, but they haven't told it to them yet either.
Exactly.
I'm reminding them of their promise.
And I don't know, the more I talk to you about this, I suspect that they are going to do both of them, not consecutively, but concurrently. I guess it's a good thing that our highway department widened those shoulders up there on Myers Road. It's going to be a busy road.
Yeah, because the state can't hold off on the Salmon Creek Bridge because it's a problem, and so they're going to do it on their timeline regardless of the Salmon Creek Bridge, or the Ludlow Bridge. The other thing that came out at the council was they got 2016 census data showing where people are commuting to and from Lansing. It's a fascinating pie chart to see where people are going to from Lansing and where people are commuting into Lansing from.
Are we going to get that presented?
I can send you the data if you really want a presentation. I can probably get it.
I think other people might be interested.
I can ask if would you like to see your presentation?
You know, I would, because we're doing a traffic study. I think we will be doing, right, CJ? There's a traffic study coming out.
For town center.
Yes,
Area.
and amongst other things, it would be very nice to see, I know that, you know, where the traffic patterns are, how far out they come here, because one of the things that CJ and I are working on are to, I would say, we resurrect, but revive the economic development committee, because we're looking at, there's someone that has a passion for doing that right now, and I think she could be the driving force to get this back in place. One of those things is say, what patterns are we looking at here? What patterns of people are we looking at here to see where they want to go, what destinations, what services that they need from a business standpoint?
Well, this is broken by census tracts. So you don't get exactly Lansing. You get Lansing, a little bit of Groton.
Yeah.
And then you get the village in a little bit. And what you see is the Lansing tract, only 8% of the people go to the city of Ithaca at all, which explains why you're not going to get much bus service moving back and forth between the two, because there's just not many people doing that movement as a regular commute. And so, you know, seeing the breakout, did you get this data, CJ?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and forward this to you right now. It's actually in draft form, and they're taking comments on it, so that way you could just reply right to them if you want.
Well, it's interesting because as the rumors go about TCAT when it moved, and okay, where's the bus service going to be? And where is it going to go? Besides down the Green Street in that area, which is fine, but if more people are coming to this area, more density, and now elaborate, I'm not, this is not very I'm not taking your time. But I will elaborate on that also a little bit. But
But this is part of your time.
That's right. Exactly. I don't know, usually it's 10 o'clock by the time I'm talking. So please continue.
Okay, so let's look at that, and if you want me to try to set up a presentation, I can do that. It's still in draft form, as CJ said, but I'm sure Dave would come and do a project demonstration for us. It's fascinating stuff, and he has more stuff too. He can show you all the problem intersections, you can do traffic counts for up and down. We can get a whole traffic explanation that's based on real data. That'll be really good, and I can set that up if people want it.
Great.
Probably not during budget season.
No.
Website update. I talked to the planning board about trying to unify all the different pages on the website. The planning board is very open to having the photographs as part of it, much like the town board has photos of everybody. I've got some terms of specifics that the planning board like to kind of combine the three, and I've written those all out, and I'll send them to you. Another thing that's come up is the various boards that we have, like the Conservation Advisory Council, the Ethics Board, the Water Sewer Advisory Board, are not on our website. So you can't see who's on them, you can't see any information about how to contact them. And so we probably should put together somewhere listing those boards and how to contact them.
Sure.
If somebody just puts it in a file, like a Word doc or something, for each one, and sends it to me, I can add it to the board menu where those things are.
Okay.
Thank you.
I can actually do that if you'd like me to.
That would be great, because I don't have to know the answers to all of
I
them.
believe we have both with all the different,
Yeah.
all the,
Well,
you're saying the boards.
It's
Do
in
you
your
want
directory, right?
boards, or do you, right, do you want boards, do you want committees, what is it you're looking for to have?
I think everything, so people know how to plug into the town.
Is it in the directory already?
It is in the directory. Oh, I could just hand him the directory, is what you're saying.
Wow.
Well,
Wow.
you'd have to.
I think he'd like it to
You'd
be
probably
in the
rather have it
electronic
just
form.
typed.
I would like my job to be to basically copy paste
Okay,
onto a new page and
okay,
leave it into the menu, but not for me to be typing stuff.
okay, we'll get it to you.
Thank you.
Thank you, that would be excellent.
Also, I think when you and I and Pat talked many months ago, we talked about a picture day like they have at school for the whole staff, because some of the pages have some pictures and not everybody is pictured. Everyone should be pictured, puts a face on
That's true.
the town, literally.
It helps at meetings to know who you're looking for when you're coming to a meeting, and you have a vision of the people. So I will send you the specifics on how the layout is so that you can try to. I talked to Herb about ZBA, and he's going to get back to me when they finally meet as to whether they feel comfortable with their pictures, unless we want to just tell ZBA they're having pictures put on. He didn't want to state it outright, he wanted to talk to his board. So I'm asking what the board thinks about that. So far, we've got all staff, all the planning board, all the town board. Are we going to agree with the ZBA says not us?
As
Is
the
there any
webmaster,
reason?
I want to talk about consistency. I think that you do some, you have to do all. Because you're setting up an expectation, and people look, and then they go somewhere else to another committee or whatever, and it's not there, and then they don't know what they're looking at. So, in my opinion, it should be all of them.
I agree with you.
I mean, maybe not the committees, but certainly the big ones like the planning board, ZBA, town board already has it.
We have one ZBA number here, not to put you too much on the spot. Would you have a problem with your picture being on the website?
I don't have a problem with it. I have known people in the past that have issues with it. So.
Anything else?
I'm working on finding out, I'm still working on getting a picture of Peter Wheeler that could be used in the method of carving in these signs. It'll look decent. And so that's in process of getting pricing for getting that out. I'm hoping to come to us at the next meeting with a package of how much this would cost and what we could do.
Okay.
That's my report. These other 5 minutes.
That's fine. Speaking of which, I'm working with Doug Dake on the Stoshberg dedication also. You know, we sent out some preliminary stuff for resolution. There's some things we need to add to that. One of the things that the family has asked Doug is if there is something down the park you can have named after him or a sign of someplace down the park rather than here on the board office.
That seems understandable.
And hopefully we'll have that dedication, I believe, in October, because Doug's halfway around the world right now. So. And you'll be back with that. What else was about? It's obviously budget time, fun time, amongst other things. Senior citizens, they're a fun bunch. People we have to them. Also, the Air Service Board got a tour of the new renovations going on. That's very interesting. One of the things that discussed, but there's a rumor going around about TCAT wanting to move up here possibly. And how that affects the transportation, and how that affects what's going on in the whole area. And does the airport now have a trauma center, a heliport where you can go right here since you have community care and a hospital on this side? All these things are being in discussion, amongst other things, as far as also being self-sufficient in case there is either man-made or natural disasters, what happens there. And this data would be extremely helpful because then you'll see the patterns of where people are, where they want to go, and maybe you have pockets where people don't go downtown from here. The thing I also love to do is get the patterns of people coming in from other areas into Tompkins County, because we have a tremendous interest still in Milton Meadows over there, which has been delayed a little bit. They're waiting for the transformers to come in so they can go to three-phase power. So that's been delayed by a few months, but we have tremendous interest over there by young people and also by seniors. And I find that interesting. So that's another thing that we're working on. We're also working on with CJ as far as the reclamation, and I'm sure you know the proper words for this, for if the power plant does shut down permanently, how we can recoup some of that money back. It's down to $20 million now. We don't know how much that would be, but it has to drop at least 20%. So the new assessment goes at least $16 million or below, we would qualify for something. So would the school, so would the county, so would the fire protection, so would the library. That's my understanding. So we're working with the school on this, and we'll see where that goes. Now it's just a matter, we've tried it before, so we have most of the template done. It's just a matter of reapplying. And once again, we have to first of all find out if the power company will be a power company or not. We don't know that yet. But we get 90% of it done, so if they're not, we move forward with that. There's other stuff going on, but for right now, I think because I'd like to get out of here before 8:30, unless we have executive session, that's all I have to report. Do you have anything for executive session? This is, can we like take a moment then? It's like, it's not 10 o'clock, it's 9 o'clock, it's all cool. I guess we can adjourn then. We're done.
Let's go.
Mark. Thank you.
Joe,
Yes.
I think I misinterpreted something you said earlier.